What does it mean to live a resilient life? I'm Ryan Manion. I lost my brother to war and my mom to cancer, and I've learned a lot about myself along the way. Now, as the CEO of Travis Manion Foundation, I'm on a journey to explore what it means to be resilient against life's many challenges. Join me and some incredible guests as we ask ourselves the hard questions and define what it means to struggle well. All right, we are back today with another episode of the Resilient Life podcast, and I'm here with Meghan McCain. And Meghan, I've been so excited to talk to you, and I have to tell you that you're like the Kevin Bacon. We have so many different degrees of separation. It's like unbelievable. And
yeah, we have a lot of mutual friends. Yeah. It's nice.
And, I was thinking, so, your sister-in-law came to us a few years ago with an idea. Well, it was actually something that she did at Arlington, and it's grew into one of our largest awareness campaigns for Memorial Day, the Honor Project. And,
yeah.
But I was thinking back to kind of the first time that I got a chance to really know your family. So mutually, Megan Lakovich is a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And
she's wonderful.
Yeah. And
people that don't know, she's like my mom's long time. She was her personal assistant when my dad ran for president. And then I don't know her exact title now. She's like her chief of staff or something. I apologize to her. I don't know her exact name, but yeah, she's been working with my family for like 20 years, for like a really long time now.
She's her everything, right? I just saw them in Ireland, actually, for the Navy Notre Dame game, your mom and Megan. But my dad ran for Congress in 2008 when your dad was running for president. And he came to, we're in Bucks County. So of course, you're a candidate for Congress, for president, for anything, you're coming to Bucks County, right? And they asked my dad to introduce your dad. And we were so excited my dad was so honored and excited for that opportunity. And so it was down at Shady Brook Farms in Newtown. And we got on the bus, my mom and I, afterwards, and with your mom. And I was 9 months pregnant. I gave birth to my daughter Honor on November 25th. So and I was working for the campaign. Her name's Honor. Yeah. And I was on the bus with your mom and my mom. And, I was dragging it this time because it was late October, early November. And I was my dad's finance director. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through. This baby is And I just remember I was having conversations with your mom, and your mom said, "You remind me so much of my daughter. I just have to tell you that." Yeah. And
I love that.
we had such a beautiful conversation. And I have, I'll send you the picture afterwards, but I have a picture of the three of us, my mom, your mom, and myself. And I always think back, I think back to that cycle. And, because people ask me about when my dad ran for Congress, and I said, listen, my dad got more votes than any Republican challenger in the state of Pennsylvania, but it was the Obama wave. There was nothing you could do. And I look like, had things been different, your dad would have been president and my dad would have been in the House serving, in Congress. So, but it was an exciting time. And I often am able to relate to you a lot when you talk about your dad, and when you talk about, you're very you defend your dad to the death. And I remember, and you have it on such a bigger level than I did. But when my dad was running for Congress, it was 6 months after my brother was killed in Iraq. And people said some horrible things about, my dad was running, it was exploiting his son's death. And it was so hard to hear. And so every time, I see you standing up for your dad, for, somebody saying something, I'm like, I get it so much. And, I did the same exact thing and would continue to do the same thing for my dad.
Yeah, I love that. I didn't know that you had met my dad. You must have been like very young in 2008 because you look really young now. Yeah, I have such beautiful memories of that entire time. And obviously, if you worked for your dad, I think it's more common than people realize for children of politicians to work with their families. And it's like, I think any other industry that, you just trust who you're related to, obviously in a different way, and you don't have to pay them as much. And it's like, it's an entirely different thing. And people are always like, you're such a Nepo baby. And I'm like, it's pretty common. It's like pretty, yeah, especially in politics, I have found like 9 times out of 10, a finance chair is someone, a comms person normally is a child or like a brother or an uncle or something. And I actually think it's one of like the cool things about politics too.
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, um I had no, I didn't know what a finance chair was, but they were like, listen, you're the person that makes sure your dad makes the calls. And no one,
Uh-huh.
I had to be like, Dad, sit down and call this person right now. And, here's your list. And it was a family affair because like you say, you have to find people you intimately trust and
Yeah.
that are going to be there for you and are in it for the right reasons. And politics, as you know, is an ugly game and an ugly world, and there's a lot of deception in it. And so for us, it was a full-on family affair for sure.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know your dad's entire political history, but did he ever think about running again?
So the next time around, it was the Kevin McCarthy called my dad and said run again, and he didn't. He decided not to. He was just like, it took a toll, which again,
Sure.
but like for us, it was like he was grieving his son, and it was just like he got into it and he was like, I don't know if I want to do that again. But I actually got a little bit of the bug, and I ran for our township supervisor, and I served for 12 years. I didn't run for reelection, but I did two 6-year terms. And I remember, I tell this story because when I ran the following year after my dad, and my dad was Manion for Congress and I was Manion for supervisor, right? And so I never changed my name when I got married. I was always Ryan Manion. And at the polls, the woman I ran against an incumbent, and she was like, you're deceiving the voters. They think your dad's running. And I'm like, well, that's on them not to be educated because,
Right.
um, but yeah, I got in, I did township supervisor for 12 years, and, you know, I learned so much about how everything starts at the local level. And
Mhm.
people do not realize how important it is to understand who your local elected officials are, because they play such a more important role in your day-to-day life than anything else. So
I think after COVID, people are much more
totally.
cognizant. I think I know I am. Not that I wasn't before, but now I'm like very, because they run everything. It was the difference between if you could go outside and, whatever, go to a store and not, if your kids were masked or not, depending on who locally was, running everything. So, are you going to run for anything else?
I don't think so. I think I've thought about it. I like what I'm doing now. I feel like, again, I feel like I have so much more of an impact when I'm not um I feel like I have more of an impact not being in a seat than, I just feel like what I do right now with the Travis Manion Foundation, we are nonpartisan.
Mhm.
And for me, I feel like I can affect more of change that I want to affect doing what I'm doing
Sure,
now. So
sure. I understand that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
It's not a great time right now either. Like, it's not a great moment to be interested in politics. At least that's how I feel.
no, and I think the same thing. And I think, again, a lot of people will ask me because I am a middle-aged mom in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which is it like this is kind of sets the temperature for, and people are like, well, what are people saying around you? And and I will say that when I ran in 2012 and I for reelection, I've told this story, or 2017, I've told this story a lot. People would ask me as I was knocking on doors, like, did you vote for Trump? Like that mattered to them. And what mattered was, for some people, if I said yes, they were like, okay, you have my vote. And I only knocked on Republican doors. I'm knocking on my Republican doors, just trying to get them to come out and vote. And I knew that no matter how I answered that question, I was going to tick someone off, because there were the Trump voters that were like, of course you vote for Trump. And then there were the Republicans that said, I'm not going to vote for you if you voted for Trump. I see that dynamic around Bucks County changing a little, for sure. I think there's more of an acceptance of Trump within Bucks County, because I think, just again, I feel like in my adult life, it's been the lesser of two evils when it comes to presidential elections, and so that's been a tough position, I think, for new voters. My daughter just turned 18 last week, and I'm like, you're going to be voting in your first presidential election, and I'm like, well, there's a lot to figure out, a lot for you
You've got a great one for start out with. That's amazing. 18. I can't. I have a 1.5-year-old and I'm sorry, 1.5-year-old, yes, and a 3.5-year-old. And it's funny, my husband and I this morning were talking about, like, where the hell are we going to send them to college? And like, I hope the elections are better. Like, just feeling like, this moment just feels so, at least for me, just it's so monotonous. And I feel like my news cycle is just, it's Taylor Swift, Trump, Biden, Taylor Swift, Trump, Biden. And I just want to talk about anything else but those three things. And I'm like, I just can't keep talking about these three people all day long.
I totally get it. Yeah. And I have two girls that are 2 years apart too. And then I have a son that came around way later. So I have the little 10-year-old as well. But it goes so fast. And so like you saying I have a 1.5-year-old and a 3.5-year-old, like, I feel like that was yesterday for me. And my 18-year-old is leaving for college this week,
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so
how do you feel? Are you sad?
I am feeling all the things. I am not an overly emotional person. And so, as I've watched my friends send their kids off to college and they talk about, oh my gosh, it's so hard. I'm like, okay, yeah. But I didn't feel like I could really relate, and I didn't think I would be that person. I'm riding home yesterday in the car and playing like, Mamma Mia slipping through my fingers, and I'm crying. Like, I'm intentionally making myself sad. I'm putting on the sad songs about like mother and daughter relationships. But yeah, like for me, especially with my first, I'm like, she made me a mom, right? And I think back, and I was a young mom. I was 24 when I had her. And so like, I think about now, like, I've got a kid going off to college and we grew up together, largely. Like, I feel like I learned so much about who I was from her. And I said it this morning before I came down here, her 16-year-old sister's still asleep in bed, and she's going out for a run. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do without you. Cause she's like, I'll get Travis breakfast. Cause my 10-year-old's like, I'm hungry. And she's like, I'll take care of it. And I'm like, what am I going to do when you leave? Like, I'm still in bed, So, I don't know. It's a weird feeling to be in, because you start thinking about, oh, she's leaving, and then my other daughter's going to leave. And like, next thing you know, like that life that you had, you've created this life with your husband and with your kids, and it's going to completely change, So.
Yeah, I really don't look forward to that at all. I'm so, obviously, like every mom, you're just so attached, and you're right. Your life is just so, we're taping at 10 a.m. and part of the reason, like, I had to get my daughters up and ready, and one of them to dance camp this morning, like before I could do this, just stuff like that, where you're like, your whole life changes. I wish I had had kids sooner. I was very scared to become a mom, and I'm very envious of women who figured it out younger, because I was 35 when I had my first child, and it's too old. Like, I wish I was much younger when I did it.
Well, I don't think I certainly did not have it figured out. It was just, I'm one of those, I'm a little bit like, let's see what happens, I don't always fully think. I operate sometimes on like fearless ignorance, right? I don't always fully, I'm not one of those, let's think it all through, because frankly, I probably still wouldn't have had a child if I was thinking it all through, But I had my last child at 36, so I feel you, because when I had Travis, I was like, Oh man, I am way too old for this. I was like, this is a
Yeah.
lot. But parenthood is the greatest thing. And, you know, for me, one of the things that I've really appreciated and I love about you is that I've never taken a backseat to what I wanted to accomplish professionally. And it's I've always worried because I travel a lot and,
Mhm.
you know, I've definitely missed some, we'll call them milestone moments, but you know, I didn't miss my kids walking, but I've missed things like at school. I'm never able to be like the homeroom mom. Like there's things that I just wasn't able to do. And it was actually my daughter wrote me a card for my birthday and just last year and you know wrote about like how she watched and you're the hardest working person I know. And I was like, it all paid off because for me it was like at least if they know and they watch me, and I hoped that would it be like that. But I wasn't sure, but it was.
Your daughter know what she wants to do?
So she's going to the Naval Academy. Uh,
Oh, shut up. That's fabulous. Oh my gosh.
so
Congratulations. If she needs anything, I live like sort of close. I
yeah,
go to the academy like not totally infrequently because it's where my dad's buried.
course.
So, like if you need anything, please let me know
Thank you.
and tell her to have to go to Cantler's immediately, the crab restaurant there. It's the best crabs in like anywhere. It's my favorite.
We're there all the time. I love Cantler's, best place. But
Favorite. No.
yeah. Yeah, so you know, she knows she wants to she knows she's gonna serve her country. She's not sure if it'll be in the Navy or the Marine Corps, and from there she'll figure it out.
For people that don't know, it's harder to get into the Naval Academy than Harvard. It's like an incredibly elite thing. You should be so proud. I'm sure you are, but I love I my friend's son really wants to go to the Naval Academy and he was talking to me about it. And I was like, in an era where I feel like I'm just hearing the most negative stories about seniors all the time. I'm like, there's also this other flip side where they're like wanting to serve in the military and really amazing like members of their community. And I love stuff like that. Even though no wonder she's going to college now because she's got the early midweek, right?
yeah,
Or they start now.
summer they call it. Yeah.
Supposed to be rough, right?
Yeah, it's like 7 weeks of basically boot camp, you know, is
Yeah.
what she's gonna be
I
doing.
just remember they shaved my brother's head, or my brother Jack when he went. They
Yeah.
shaved his head. It's funny. Yeah. Well, congratulations. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, the girls used to have to get their hair cut to their chins. And
Mhm.
she actually said to me, and they changed that about 6 or 7 years ago. And she said, Mom, and now they either have to, if they can't put it in a tight bun with nothing sticking out, they have to cut it. But if they can, and she's been growing her hair out since she got in, because she's like, Mom, I'm telling you, that maybe would have been a decision factor for me. Like the chin cut, I don't think I could have done that. But yeah, I mean,
Funny.
for us, you know, my dad's a retired Marine Corps colonel. So she's like, my brother was obviously a Marine. So she's grown up in a world surrounded by people who served in the military. And, you know, but it's never been pressure, or we've never like tried to push her towards you're going to the Naval Academy. She's just been around this world and appreciated it. And frankly, for her, the neatest thing about it is she sees the opportunities it can afford her. And so I think she's at her age to understand that. I was like, I wasn't thinking about that at all. And she's nothing like me. I was terrible. Like I wasn't thinking about my future. I mean, she thinks so far out. And yeah, it's pretty awesome.
My friend has a daughter who's at the Naval Academy and she's gonna start working in submarines. And I was like, that is so not what I was doing when I
Yeah.
was like 20 or 22. It's like so amazing. And also just like people work on submarines. Like it's just, I don't know, it's like almost overwhelming to think about all the incredible jobs and things. And obviously it's just amazing to be so selfless to join the military. I mean, it's really incredible. You must be so proud.
I am. Yeah, it's exciting. So 9:45 on Thursday, we drop her off. And then don't get to talk to her for 7 weeks, get to write
Oh
her
God.
letters. So I think that is also compounding the fact that I'm sending her away. Like, not only is she going to college, but she's going there. I'm not going to talk to her for 7 weeks. So there's a lot, but she's ready for it. And that's what I keep telling myself. Like, she was made for this.
Like 2 times ago when I was visiting my dad's grave, I was like sitting and just like, whatever, doing what one does when you go to a grave. And a guy, like a midshipman, came by with a date, and he was like coming and he was like, oh, we wanted to see the headstone. I was like, why are you here why are you taking your date on a graveyard? Like, that's so like not hot at all. And I guess they can't go anywhere.
No.
Like they can't, like leave or anything. And he's like, it's just like one of the things we do. And I was like, you got to find something better than this. It's awful coming across as like, people mourning at a gravesite. But it was funny. I was like, get out of here. Like, what's
Well,
happening?
I'll tell you, every time I go for a run, when I'm in Annapolis, and I love to just run on the yard because it's so beautiful. And every time I do, I run over there and, pay my respects to your father. So yeah.
It makes me like sort of happy sometimes. I mean, it's always hard, but there's always so many things on his grave. Like people leave flowers and cacti and like coins and flags. And every time I go, when I bring flowers or whatever, I always have to like move stuff. And it's amazing. He'll be dead 6 years in August. And to have so many people still, paying their respects so often is really beautiful. I mean, not to like brag, but his headstone you can find easily because there's stuff all over it.
Yeah.
And, there's like, it's like really beautiful.
And I think it's really beautiful that he's buried there, as well.
Me too.
And, I think for those midshipmen, I mean, to see a midshipman bringing his date there, like it means something to them to have
Yeah.
somebody like your father. He could have been buried in a lot of other places, right? And for your family to choose to lay him to rest there, I think is so beautiful. And it's so important, to that institution and the midshipmen they're creating.
Yeah, it's really, I don't take it for granted at all. And, I'm obviously not in the military, nor have I ever been in the military. So I always have to ask permission before I go on, and they allow family members, whatever. But even whenever I'm going on, this sounds weird, but he's like buried on a bluff overlooking the water. So it is quite beautiful
Mhm.
to go there. And he's buried next to his former best friend. So, all things considered, if you have to go to a gravesite, it's a pretty good one for me.
There you go. The other thing too that I feel really connected to you about is my mom died in 2012 from cancer. And 8 months when she was diagnosed with lung cancer. Um Not
God.
Yeah, and it was terrible because she was picking up my daughter, Honor. She went to pick her up, and Honor kind of like wriggled around, and she was like, "Oh," and she grabbed her wrist, and I was like, "What happened?" She's like, "I don't know. She just bent my wrist funny." And we were at the beach that week, and her wrist kept bothering her, and she put an ace bandage on it, and just said, we joked around that my 3-year-old sprained her wrist. It was like the joke. We got back and she went to her friend who was an orthopedic and was like, hey, something happened. He took an x-ray and he said, he clearly saw something on the x-ray, and he sent her down to Penn. And within 24 hours, she was being operated on. She had a tumor in her wrist. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, my mom has bone cancer. This is crazy. Well, it was lung cancer that was all over her body, and,
Ugh.
completely symptomless. And it's the scariest thing for me because I think about like how you can just be operating and not have, my mom wasn't a smoker. She didn't have this lingering cough that we were like, oh, you knew this was coming, right? And to just all of a sudden one day wake up, and really my daughter had broken her wrist because she had so many tumors in her wrist that her bones were so fragile. But we found out
Gosh.
within 48 hours that she had lung cancer. It was everywhere, and they gave her 8 months to live, and she died almost 8 months to the day of that diagnosis. And you know
Sorry.
my brother was killed in Iraq. So we get this knock. It's like you learn the worst news of your life, and it's this tragic, shocking moment. And I'm often think about like, and it's this kind of morbid thought, but like, which was worse? Was it just like learning that my brother died, or was it watching my mom die this slow and painful death? And for me, you know, my mom's death was so hard because you just saw her life slipping away. And I know, again, you were your dad's caretaker. I was my mom's. I moved my family in. We lived a mile down the road, but my family moved in with my dad and mom because my dad was still working. And I was like, I'm going to take care of her. And it was really tough. And so I understand and I can feel what you went through with the loss of your dad as well.
I don't think people understand unless you've gone through it. And my family, we were all caretakers, but it's definitely I, having a baby was so much easier than like, I think like people are always like, did you have like, any issues? And of course, having a newborn is hard, but is no comparison to taking care of someone when they're dying, in my experience. And it forever changed the way I look at life, and it changed me. And I'm like grateful for the experience because his privacy was so important to us. I never wanted anyone to see him in a condition where one gets when they have brain cancer, because people see him as this like Marvel character now in particular. Like he's become like, it's funny. He had a very like dark sense of humor, and I don't know how much he would love the fact that he's been turned into this like patron saint of thing. Like he was like a rough Navy guy too, like swore a lot, whatever. So it's kind of funny to see that now. But yeah, I mean, he died 13 months after he was diagnosed, so a little longer. And the quality of life is not great, especially in those last few months. But I don't know what kind of person becomes a palliative care or hospice nurse, but those people should be paid as much as TV personalities are paid, because I can't imagine doing that job. And I'm just still so grateful to the nurses and people who helped us through that experience. It's horrible. I'm so sorry you had to go through it too. People approach me all the time who have lost parents to cancer. It's like the main more than anything, more than like Trump or The View or anything else. Like it's always, I lost, especially people who've lost to brain cancer and glioblastoma, which is what my dad had. But it's rough. And, I still feel like I have, moments where I just, still not processing, but you still have, for me, I still have moments of grief and sadness that hit me at different times. Not all the time. It's definitely, a much better, but, and for me, it never really goes away. Not really. I don't know about you.
It doesn't go away. I mean, listen, I lost my brother 17 years ago. And again, I'm pretty stoic. Well, I am externally, but I get hit with things still to this day where I'm just like, and I think about it like my nuclear family was four. It was me, my mom, my dad, and my brother. And in 5 years, my mom and my brother were gone. And
Yeah.
my dad and I joke around sometimes because we kind of turn to ourselves and we're like, really? It's the two of us,
Yeah.
It's just like, wow. And, when you looked at kind of the dynamics of our family, my brother was the golden child, as he should be, because he was incredible. And like, I was happy to be in his shadow and celebrate everything that he did. And so, when he died, it was just, I mean, it was a tremendous loss. But then my mom, my dad was the Marine colonel, but my mom was the captain of our family. Like my mom ran everything. And so, I tell stories about like my dad, and he probably wouldn't want me saying this, but like when my mom died, my dad was like, well, wait, how do I use the washing machine?
Oh, sure.
I mean,
That's calm.
yeah, my dad made, for dinner, he knew how to do two things. He could make tuna fish or fry an egg, and I'm
Uh-huh.
like, he needs to learn how to cook, I mean, and it
Yeah.
was this, I dealt with so much more. I had really, really crippling anxiety after my mom died. To the point where I had to seek therapy. I couldn't leave my house. It was bad. And I think it was kind of that. It was kind of with my brother, I kind of pushed my grief aside because when he died, it was very publicized. And so we just kind of captured the moment where we were like, we're going to live for him and we're going to do things for him. And we started the Travis Manion Foundation and we got real big real fast. And my mom was running it and we were setting all these goals and we were out there, and the Marine Corps and the military in general, they do a great job of like honoring. And so I feel like there were ceremonies and memorials for years after his death. And so it was very busy and there was like time and took up a lot of me processing his death. With my
Sure.
mom, she died and it was like the world went black. And I'm like,
Sure.
oh my gosh, like this is crazy. And I couldn't process it. And so, I definitely went through, and I don't know if you've ever had these feelings, but like I did the why me. Like, what did I do wrong? Was there something I did to like have all of this happen to me? And it's a very selfish thought because it didn't happen to me. It happened to my mom and it happened to my brother, right? But for me, I was like, how can my mom was my rock? I still dial my mom's phone number today. Like, I kept her phone number and I just dial it to hear her voice on her voicemail. Um,
Mhm.
and I have those moments where no one's no one's saying what I need them to say to me. And I'm like, my mom would be the person that I could talk to about this, and she's not here. And so that's the hardest for me.
Yeah. I was like a feral animal after my dad died. I was like just a mess and did all the things like therapy and I didn't go on medication, but I probably should have. And I had a really hard time processing it for, all the reasons you did. And then it was so public too
Yeah.
that people like didn't really know how to talk to me. And then I was working on this show that was obviously like very combative and chaotic. And to say that they were not sensitive to what I was going through is putting it like very nicely. I always tell this story when I first got there, when I was working at The View. A story was leaked about me that I was like a cold ice princess, and they nicknamed me Elsa. And I remember talking to the executive producer and being like, I wonder why I'm sad right now. I wonder why I'm a little cold and I want to be best friends with everybody. Like, and I feel like that for me made it so much worse too, because I wasn't like surrounded by people who were compassionate or really seem to care. But it's now been a long time and I feel I'm in a much better place, but I definitely still have moments. The anniversary of his death is in August, and August is not always great for me. Like toward the end of August, I always have to make sure I'm in a place that's like private and healthy at the anniversary of his death. And his death and his birthday are like 4 days apart, so that's not that fun either.
Yeah.
But
Well,
but,
and I think,
I always people have it worse though. I mean, you've lost your brother and your mother. Like I always think of like the worst. Like I always try and be like, I am so lucky. There are so many worse things. I could have been so much younger when my dad died. Like, I think like losing a brother in war is a whole other thing. And I just can't, I don't know. I can't even fathom that.
yeah, I think that, one of the things for me is I am very public with, especially on social media, sharing stories about my brother. And
Mhm.
and I often wonder, I'm like, are there people that are like, God, she's still talking about him? Like it's been 17 years. And I love when I see you post things about your dad. And I'm like, yes, like, it doesn't matter how much. In fact, as time goes on, I want to be more intentional about sharing things about my brother because it's even that much more important to me that people know his story and know who he was and understand him for, again, like you say, your dad's been like kind of put in this Marvel character. Like my brother's been put on this pedestal of, he was this Marine hero, and he was, and he did some really heroic things on the last day of his life and received a silver star for his actions that day. But I try to like bring it back to like my brother was funny as shit. Like he was one of the funniest people ever. And, there's a lot of stories I won't share on social media because it'll take away that whole mystique about him. But I want people to know who he was as Travis, my brother, not
Yeah.
First Lieutenant Travis Manion.
I've ever met a Marine before. They're not, respectful to Marines. They're the most, in my experience, like toughest and the most intense of anyone in the military. I've been around quite a few Marines. One of my brothers is one. And I love Marines, but I wouldn't expect him to be like, sipping tea someplace and being very polite. I wouldn't have that impression of someone who's at that level in the Marines.
Yeah, definitely. I um I was on The View once, and not to talk too much about The View, but I went on there and with Donald Rumsfeld. So so Donald Rumsfeld, when he was alive, he donated $500,000 to the Travis Manion Foundation.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Yeah, it was incredible. And so we did, and it was actually, he had an app called Churchill Solitaire.
Mhm.
And he made this app about the solitaire he used to play with Winston Churchill. It was awesome. The story behind it was incredible. And all the proceeds went to TMF. And so we did a little bit of a press tour. We went on a bunch of things, and then they were like Fox News. And I'm like, Fox News, or excuse me, The View. And I'm like, The View. And I'm like, okay. And so we went on, and I have to tell you, Joy Behar was the rudest.
God.
I mean, she could not have been ruder. And it was such a bad experience. And she was calling Donald Rumsfeld Rumsey. And she was like, oh, Rumsey. And I found it so disrespectful. And the way she was, and he was older at this time. It was just a few years before he died. And I mean, he was completely mentally cognizant, but still, like, the level, like, she had no respect for him, and you could tell. And she was doing this like playful thing with him where she was like, I don't agree with anything you've done, Rumsey, but you're still a nice guy. And it was just so off-putting. And afterwards, I got a picture with Whoopi Goldberg because I was like, it's Whoopi Goldberg, ghost. I got to get a picture with her. And someone said, oh, do you want a picture with Joy? And I like had to I was like, I was like, oh, we got to go, did one of those. But I was so turned off by, like, you could feel you weren't on yet, or you weren't there that day. But you could feel the toxicity it was just not a warm environment. And we had done everything from, like, we were on the Today Show the day before, we did a bunch of stuff on Fox News, but like everywhere we went, there was a level of respect that they gave to him. There was a reverence they gave to me when they shared that I was the sister of Marine First
Yeah.
Lieutenant Travis. Like, I mean, they introduced me, and they could have been introduced. I could have been anyone. Joy was just so uninterested, and it showed. It was a wild experience.
Well, I'm surprised they did that, just given that you're the daughter of a fallen soldier. I would expect a little more reverence, but there were so many incarnations of this. There's been so many like different versions of the show. I don't know who was like producing or whatever, but I'm sorry you had that experience, but I'm also not surprised because, when the funny part was when I was there, if there was someone like you on, like a military person, a Republican, anyone, they would always just like suck to me immediately because they knew I'd be like a safe space.
Yeah.
And it makes me sad that that is something that even like has to exist. But I'm sorry, I'm not surprised to hear that story. People share bad stories about that show with me all the
Yeah,
time.
I'm sure I'm not the first one. I actually went on again during COVID. I can't remember the girl's name. I don't know if she's still on it. It's Sarah. She's the younger girl. Um,
Yeah, she's very nice. Yeah.
Very nice. And we actually did a segment on like kids and COVID and what it was doing to young children. And she was great. And that was a good experience. But yeah, my first one was rough because I just could see how Joy was, what she was doing to Donald Rumsfeld. Like, you could tell she was being unkind by being sarcastic with him, and it really bothered me. But
I would never call him Rumsey or
yeah,
what. I mean, it's just he's a cabinet member.
yeah.
I'm not surprised to hear it, but I feel like, she is who she is, man.
Well, you had to live it. So, but the other thing the other thing I love, I keep saying the other thing I love about you, but I've been waiting to talk to you for a while, is I love your mix of politics and pop culture. And I am a Real Housewives junkie. I'm currently rewatching Beverly Hills. I'm in the early stages, and it's funny now because I'm watching, this is just when Russell killed himself. So this is like back in the day. And when you watch Real Housewives, like, you see where they are now. So to go back and watch it, you're just like, it's wild. And so I'll go back and rewatch seasons frequently. But I'd love to know, What is your favorite franchise?
It like depends which one's doing the best. Beverly Hills is pretty solid. I love Erica Jane. I'm like lucky enough I'm friends with her. So it's like we're like real friends. People are always like, "Are you friends?" I was like, "No, we like texting, FaceTime and stuff." And I see her when I'm in LA. Like she's a great person. And she's also, by the way, a big supporter of the military. Her son is in law
Yeah,
enforcement.
yeah.
She's very pro. One of the things I always really like about her. So probably Beverly Hills, but I don't know. New York used to be really good. I did not love the reboot. No offense to the people on it. I just like they're also like my age, and there's something like I like an older housewife, like 50s, 60s. I'm gonna be 40 in October, and I was like, I just don't know if I need this. Like, it's a different kind of show. I don't know. I like which I mean, Salt Lake City's pretty good too. I really like Salt Lake City too. But did you see last night on New Jersey there was like a horrible fight between Jen Aiden and Danielle, and they like pushed each other and then threw a glass, like a actual like glass on someone's face. It was crazy.
Well,
Like old school New Jersey.
there's no reunion for this year. I saw that the reunion was canceled. I just had Leah Mobb on my podcast.
Oh, really?
And
She's so smart.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I loved her. And you know, it was, listen, don't talk about Bravo or Andy or the lawsuit or any of that. And you know, I was like, I don't need to talk about that. We spent an hour talking about addiction and recovery and what she's been through, and I loved her on New York because I told her, I'm like, I loved how you walked in and you were with such an established franchise and with big characters, Luann, Ramona, Sonia, like those are hard people to walk into a room and be like, okay, I'm here. And she did it. And she was like, no bullshit about her. And the way
Yeah.
that she walked in and just kind of, you know, she was who she was. But it was, I said to her, I'm like, it was very clear, like, you had an issue with alcohol. You're saying, oh, I'm starting to drink again. I can do it socially. You could not do it socially. And she said, yeah. And I had to go through COVID watching that season and seeing myself in that place. But she was so down to earth. And I really enjoyed, I love her even more now after having her on the podcast. It was awesome.
I always told her, I actually met Leah before she was a housewife, which is so random because she had written an article for Tablet magazine about anti-Semitism in the Women's March. And I was interviewing the Women's March leaders and wanted to talk about basically all the things we're seeing now, like anti-Semitism being like seeped in so many places. And she like helped prep me like beforehand because I wanted to talk to her because she wrote this article. And then I met her like right before COVID happened at a dinner party for a guy she was dating. And I thought she was not a blemish on her body, stunningly beautiful. And like you, like just like these women that just look like you like come from space, so beautiful. And she was so intelligent and well read on politics that I told her, I was like, this is not, you should be in political commentary. Like you have it all. And I still think it's the space she should be in because I think she's just so highly intelligent. I love that she's like anti woke. Obviously, that's going to appeal to me. And she's very nuanced in her thinking. And I still think that is like a path she should pursue because I think she'll be very good at it.
I was, and I don't say this in a bad way, but because you didn't see it on the show, I was blown away by her intelligence of like,
Yeah.
you know, in the political spectrum and just on different issues. Like I was not expecting that when I interviewed her. And so it was a really kind of awesome conversation because of that.
I don't think, and I know there's like lots of drama with her lawsuit and it's very ugly, and I totally understand that, but I think that she really can pivot into this new lane. And yeah, I really like her a lot too. I think she's just a nice person. And you know, that kind of thing has to be very challenging as public as it is with, like you said, the lawsuit and things like that. But I really like her a lot too. I think she's just a cool person.
What do you think? I mean, do you ever get you know, you've got your podcast which is doing really well, and I love, like I was
I don't know how you do this all the time. It's hard.
so I started during COVID
Uh-huh.
because I was just like, oh, what else am I going to do? Right. I'm in COVID. And it was actually, we started it through the Travis Manion Foundation because our board was like, oh, well, it was Alex Gorski, who was at the time the chairman and CEO of Johnson & Johnson. and he's on our board of directors. And he said, I hear about these podcasts, it was just, and I said, yeah. And he's like, why don't we try that? And I said, oh, well, I'll start a podcast if you're my first guest. So at the height of COVID, I have the
Oh,
CEO
wow.
of
Yeah.
Johnson and Johnson, and he was like, okay, I'll come on. And J&J took the episode and edited it to shit, but but it was to have him as the first guest and push that out. It helped us like get big pretty quick.
The vaccine, right?
Yeah. And so, yeah, because he had the J&J vaccine, which was just coming out. And so it was great. But yeah, it's a lot. It's more than I thought it was going to be in terms of, I was like, oh, you sit down with someone once a week. It's a lot more, as you know.
It's really fun and I'm really enjoying it and I'm grateful for like anybody who cares what I have to say. It's just like things pop off. I'm sure you feel how this happens to you. Like things that pop off on social media surprise me because I'll just be like talking like this and you don't think anything of it. And then I'm feuding with J-Lo. And that was like not the intention of the episode. Like I'm like, that was not, we like talked a lot about the state of American politics. I interviewed like these amazing journalists and like that's the clip that everybody is interested in. But it's a pleasure to do, but it is for anyone. I mean, I'm sure just like you, like I have editorial calls about it all week, like, and then even just like as simple as like, I'm really bad with clothes. I like find it overwhelming. I tend to like wear the same thing all the time. And like choosing what to wear is like kind of complicated. Like it's stuff like that where I'm like, it's just all a whole process. People have no idea. I have the utmost respect for everyone who's doing it. It's very hard.
Megan, when I started, I was buying like, going and buying like the HD makeup and I was curating my outfits. And if you look back, I'm in blazers half the time in my beginning episodes. Like I am like dressed up, what I'm putting out. And here I am today in like an old Eagles sweatshirt because it got to the point where I was just like, all right, I can't keep up with the cadence. I'm going to keep it as a more casual thing. And because that became too much for me, that became too much of a time suck to like worry about all of those things. Because that was taking up half my time. I was so worried about, did I wear this sweater yet? Was this on an episode? I don't know. I looked back, I think like the 2 episodes ago, it was like 2 episodes in a row. I'm wearing the same TMF sweatshirt and I'm like, I should have switched that up. But I love it. And I love, you talk about like, what catches me with you is that I know I can go to you and listen to your guests and hear really thought-provoking conversations about, national issues, or I could hear you and MK Hammer talking about Nora Smith and your love for her. And I loved listening to that section. Mary Catherine is one of my closest friends. And so anytime yeah.
She's like incredible woman on so many levels and I'm so grateful to know her. And it's so funny, she's been on my podcast like quite a few times and she's like fan favorite. People love her. Like love her in a way like normally people like screw you Megan. I like blah, blah. And with Mary Catherine it's just people don't know Mary Catherine Ham. People just really like she should have her own like national show because she has a huge audience that love and support her.
Well, she's been the guest I've had on the most. I've had her on 3 or 4 times. Sean, my producer, is nodding here. And her episodes are, and I'm just like, hey, just come on. And she's like, okay. We just did an episode on grief, where we just kind of like talked about the grief process and what that was. And, I met her ex-boyfriend was a reporter that was embedded with my brother when he was killed.
Okay.
So I met her in 2007, like immediately after Travis was killed, like the guy she was dating at the time, like came back and was like, I was with your brother and, introduced us to Mary Catherine. We always say like they broke up and we kept her. We were like, okay, bye guy. And she's been on our board at the Travis Manion Foundation since it was literally my mom, my dad, and myself. It was like the 4 of us and Mary Catherine, that she's original back in the day. And we talked about a lot, like when Jake died, she said, I wasn't connected to the military, but I had all these widows. Like, it was like, I know where to go. I know where to go to be around the people that are going to help me deal with this. And so, but her episodes are some of our most listened to episodes for sure. It's and I've had some really big guests on, but if you go back and look at the numbers, I'm like, Mary Catherine, you perform really well. You got to come back on. So she's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, she's a really wonderful person. I'm grateful to know her.
And I listened to your conversation I was saying with you guys talking about Nar Smith. And I was like, I know her. So listen,
You know Nora Smith?
well, no, I don't know her, but I knew who she was because I imagine that a lot of people listening to your podcast are like, who's Nara Smith? Right. But I was like obsessed with her as soon as I saw her come out. And I've got a TikTok account for better or worse. If you want to get rid of it, if you don't want to get rid of it, I find TikTok massively not just entertaining. And I was trying to tell somebody this who was telling me that TikTok is the death of America. But I was like, the stuff that I learn on, like, it is educational, like really educational. Now, I'm not advocating for your kids to sit on TikTok, but there is a lot of stuff on there. Like I'll say something, my husband's like, where did you hear that? And and I'll say something else, but I learned it on TikTok. And if I say TikTok, he's not going to take it seriously. So I don't say, but Nar Smith is this like phenomenon that I'm obsessed with her, but I also am obsessed with understanding what their day-to-day life looks like.
Yeah, there have to be nannies involved. That's the only thing I can think of with. And if people don't know, she's like this supermodel who makes cooking videos, but it's like ridiculous. It's like I'm making my own homemade cereal, and it's just not any way logical for people. And she's also doing it in like couture gowns.
Yeah.
The fantasy and it's ridiculous, but it's very entertaining. But I want to know, like, anyone who's cooked anything, how much prep's involved with like buying this stuff. And, they have 3 little kids. Like, she just had a baby. I'm like, there's a nanny or screen time someplace in this whole scenario. She's actually in a little bit of controversy right now, though, because she's been accused of stealing content from another influencer and like copying her. So yeah, I'm deep in TikTok on that too.
I have not seen that. Now, is she considered a homesteader? She's not a homesteader, right?
A homesteader, because that's the ballerina farm lady. I think you have to like live on a farm to be a homesteader.
But she does not, it doesn't look like she buys anything that she doesn't like. She makes everything herself. Her husband, Sonny, was going on a road trip and she said, oh, Sonny's going on a 25 hour road trip. And I wanted to make him some sweets. She made him homemade blow pops, like literally made him homemade blow pops. And she's like melting down the sugar till it hardens, made her own gumballs. And I mean, I can barely figure out like, where I'm going to order pizza from tonight for my kids. Like that is not my thing.
It's lucky if I roasted chicken, like let alone that. So I agree. It's not logical, but so many things on TikTok are like a fantasy or, it's not based any kind of reality. My thing with TikTok is it's way more conservative than any other platform. And we get by far the most positive engagement by far of any other platform for my work, at least. And 2, I'm not going to hear anything about China and whatever until the president gets off of it. It's clearly not enough of a danger for President Biden not to be on it. If he gets off of it, then we can have a conversation. But we've had such incredible engagement on it. It's honestly the thing that has like really like made my podcast go to the next level. And I'm so grateful for the TikTok audience. So I will never trash it, but like way more conservative than Twitter or Instagram for me, at least. Like, I mean, majority of comments are all positive, and obviously I'm conservative. And I find that really interesting because I wouldn't have guessed that.
Well, and I also think, again, what I love is like the algorithm. It is so funny because like right now I'm starting to get really into golf. And and my algorithm is all women teaching you how to golf. And I've learned so much more about my golf game from watching I literally save TikToks all day for when I'm going out to the range because I'm like, oh, I got to remember this for next time, when I'm chipping, or oh, this is a good putting. And I'm like, I'm literally learning my golf game off of TikTok. And I find it fascinating that, again, my kids use it to do the latest dance trends. And I think I like it. I like watching them. They don't do anything outrageous. And I find it super entertaining just to watch their content. And they have private accounts. It's not public. I'm always warning them about being public with their accounts and being careful. But I think TikTok by far is the most entertaining and engaging platform there is in social media right now, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I'm not like advocating that people put their kids on it or anything like that. But for me, it's actually been, and I don't know if this is with you too. It's actually been useful for content because there are things happening that come up in my feed a lot that I was unaware of that aren't being covered a lot of other places, particularly in entertainment. And I mean, like I found out Justin Timberlake was got a DUI from TikTok, like stuff like that. So I'm not gonna like, be negative towards something that has been so useful to me with my work.
Well, we actually put up we made a video for the Honor Project for
Uh-huh.
Memorial Day. And, we put it out on all the different platforms and we put it up on TikTok and it went viral. And it
Awesome.
had like 3 million views. And we were like, whoa,
That's
yeah.
yeah.
And so,
Yeah, because a lot of pro-military. I'm swear to God, it's like the conservative hide place. I mean, not that you have to be conservative to support the military or the Travis Banyan project, but like, it's if I have found it to be like a very positive space.
yeah.
So
What do you think of, and not just on TikTok, but as a whole, like this phenomenon of people, and there's been some bad cases of it, but people documenting their lives with their young children.
well, I actually like I put very few anything of my kids anymore. Mostly because I actually have some issues right now with some people who are just mentally unstable, being very aggressive with my life, which I'm sure you've had to. It's the really ugly downside of doing anything publicly. So I've been more freaked out than I have been, normally. And there's actually interesting conversations about laws about consent and kids, like, the kind of money that like influencers make off their children and things like that. And I really like, I will put a bit like, there's certainly like pictures of my children that are on Instagram, but it's very rare. And I get freaked out now because again, there just are, unfortunately, there's just so many crazy people in the world and people are not in control of themselves. And I'm sure you too, you get this like maternal instinct where you're like, I don't, and much like your daughter, my daughters have unique names. So I feel like even like when they go play, like my daughter, I sent her to a play group in DC and the people knew she was my daughter because her name's Liberty. And they were like, and that's an unusual name. But even though it's funny, you named your daughter Honor. So clearly we're on the same wavelength with things. I was pregnant during COVID though, and I wanted like an apocalypse name. I was like, I need like a name where like if the world's coming to an end, like be like Sarah Connor and save us from the robots. Because people always ask where it came from. And I was like, I was just feeling like hyper patriotic and hormonal. So that's why we chose it. But yeah, I mean, how do you navigate it with your kids?
So my social media it used to be my personal thing, right? So it was all my kids, right? And I didn't really have a following at all. I'm now going back and getting rid of a lot of stuff. I put up stuff around my kids about my kids if they're okay with it because they're at the age where they can tell me. Honor does not want to be on my social media at all. Like at all. Where she'll go back into the archives and be like, why is this still up here? Get rid of it. And so if I will post a picture, like if we're taking a family picture, she will say, you can take this picture, but you can't put it on social media. And I don't, So you see a lot of like, it's like us without honor in it. And, but she doesn't want to be on and she's 16 years old. And she, it used to be a joke where I would post something and then she'd DM me and say, take this down or I'm going to report you,
Oh,
and, it'd be like a first day of school pic. And it was like this funny banter. But now as she's gotten older, I think a lot of her friends follow me now. And a lot of people she knows. And so she's just not comfortable. And I'm totally comfortable with that. With Maggie, I think whether she likes it or not, she knows how proud I am of her and what she's about to do. So, she just said, Mom, I'm not going to be on social media for 7 weeks. Just make sure you don't post ugly pictures of me because they send out pictures of them at Plebe Summer. So we'll be able to see like proof of life of her. And she's like, Mom, just make sure like make sure I don't look terrible if you're posting these pictures. And my 10-year-old Travis loves social media. So he
Mhm.
literally will say, Mom, post this picture. And I always put him in my story. I don't necessarily put him in my posts. And then he likes to go back and look but he'll say, can you do a real post about this? So it's very interesting because kids get into it. Like he asked me to do a birthday post for him. He said, will you,
Sure.
because he likes to see people saying, happy birthday, Travis. But there's like that with like you and I, and we post and we decide when we want to post content of our kids. But there's also this whole other kind of like, I think they call it like vlogs, like it's like family vlogs, right? Where like it is them documenting their every action every day with kids that are way too young to be making the decisions whether or not they want to be all over the internet. And it's pretty frightening when you watch some of it because some people have gotten really, really big just off of their kids. I mean, it is
Yeah.
like their everything is their kids in terms of what it comes to like their income, their profession, like that goes away. And I can't remember the name of the woman um that had, I think it was, what was the name of it? Like eight um my kids used to watch it, but she's the one that just with like Jody Hillebrand. Um, she just her kids were like being abused. They were like tied up in the house.
Yeah, that was off Ruby something, right? Is that right?
Ruby Frankie. Yeah.
Oh, yes, Psycho. Yes.
Eight Passengers was the name of her YouTube channel. It was called and YouTube has taken it down, but they took it down after they found out she was abusing her kids. But like for kids to be, they're in this spotlight. You are literally following this family around, and on the backside, she's literally tying her kids up in the bedroom and like starving them. It's wild.
Or that story was really obviously very disturbing. I also wonder, because I saw an interview with John Gosling about from John and Kate Plus Eight talking about how like he regrets reality TV with his kids in general. And I actually wonder how the Kardashians are going to age with there was a minor controversy because Kim Kardashian's daughter Northwest performed at the Lion King and people were not happy about it because it was not the greatest performance everyone has ever seen. And it was brought up as a topic for me to discuss, and I was like, I don't want to talk about a minor because it makes me uncomfortable, and she's a little girl, and I just think it's like it's inappropriate. And it's weird that like there's a child that's literally there, her entire life has been documented since birth on reality TV, and I'm curious about that.
Yeah.
Like it seems kind of like a sick experiment, like very like Truman Showy. And I think we all have to like be cogent that there are, I have a friend who works in law enforcement, and she was telling me that like there are just way more pedophiles on social media than you even realize,
Yeah.
and people targeting kids and people, and so that has really obviously impacted me. And I don't know what the right answer is. Like everything, I think we're all just trying to navigate it best we can. Um, but I do think there will be more laws regarding like, I think it's kind of child labor,
Yeah.
and the that goes to the families should obviously go to some should go to the kids as any other like child actor was. I actually I hope he's not offended that I share this story. I'm friendly with the actor Josh Peck. We have the same agent. And we had dinner, I don't know, a few months ago. We were both in Florida speaking at the same place. And I just asked him about like being a child actor. And I was like, I just don't think I could let my children like do that. I mean, they're not really interested in, I mean, I don't think they're just in acting anyway, but and he was like, yeah, like he basically was like, don't do it. Like I wouldn't ever suggest it. And then it came out, that he was obviously on a show where his co-star was being sexually abused in this like really horrific way. And then you just, like I just I'm so much more protective of like the innocence of my children than I ever thought I would be. And I really hate that I like we're all being put in these positions where it's like, can't we have nice things and just post fun pictures of our kids and make it be light and nice? But everything I post is just like, there's just a bunch of sickos posting negative things all over I could post like a picture of Jesus and people would be like, you're awful, you're the worst. So I don't want my girls to grow up and like look at some photo and it's all like, you're awful, you're the worst person ever. I'm already gonna have a lot of weird conversations with my daughters as it is, you know.
Well, I've gotten to like I've I I've gotten to the place where I have some again, you get some weird people writing in, but like there's things where I won't post a picture of me in like flip-flops anymore or like
What
because anytime I post my feet, I get
weirdos? Yeah,
like just I mean we will like I'll Sean's laughing because I've read him the comments but like the DMs I get about my feet where I
yeah,
now honestly thought maybe I need to start like a feet finder, you know, because clearly my feet are in demand, but it is disgusting. And it'll just
yeah.
be like, you know, I posted for we have 5K runs called Heroes Runs, and I was debuting the shirt and I was in a pair of flip-flops. And the comment section went from like it started out like, oh, I'm registering, and then the next like there was thousands of comments about my feet, and I had to take it down. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
disgusting. So
I I have a friend who was on WikiFeet, or she's on Wiki. She's like a
I'm
big
on
person.
WikiFeet. I have a 3.5 rating on WikiFeet for anybody that wants to know. Yes.
It's like a really gross place where it's like Wikipedia for famous people's feet. And it's like, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Where you're just like, do you want, like, it's a lot.
Megan, this was last year. I got a Google alert. And
Not to kink shame if that's your thing, but
no,
like, you know,
no, listen, I got a Google alert. You know, I have a Google alert on my name. I click on it and I was like, WikiFeet. And I'm like, what is this? I clicked
oh
on it
God.
and there's the profile. And they have pulled every image of my feet that has ever been on the internet. And then people rate your feet. So I have a 3.5 out of 5, which I was a little bit insulted about that. I was like, wait, what? But yeah, that's totally
Just
bizarre. Totally bizarre.
uh,
Um, so as you know, someone again, you've been interviewing people forever, you know, in your stint when you were on The View. Now on the podcast, obviously you have a lot more leverage and creative input and can make decisions in a much different way. If you could interview anyone, I was gonna say living or dead, but I'm gonna say living because I want to see if we can manifest that. Like, who would you want to interview?
so this is really weird. But she keeps saying no. So that's why I really want to interview her. I actually really wanted to have a really real conversation with Sarah Palin because I think we have like unique stories we can share together. And also, we probably hate the same people at this point. And I would just love to talk to her about this like really unique experience in her life and obviously our weird connection. But she says she just keeps saying no. And I keep saying like I come from a place of literally nothing but just like first of all, no one ever comes on my show that doesn't have a positive experience because I've been on the other side of it. I know how traumatizing it can be.
Yeah.
And I just genuinely would like love to reminisce about a beautiful time in my life. And she keeps saying no, so we'll keep trying. But and that's a weird answer, but it's probably because I can't get her on, and also I just feel like I would have so much to talk to her about.
I mean, listen, for better or worse, you guys went through an experience together, you know, and it was a historic moment when she was named as the vice president nominee. Um and yeah, I feel like enough time has passed, right? That you guys could have I would be so fascinated by that conversation. So,
I I feel a lot of affection for her too, because once I got to like a bigger level of people knowing who I was, there's just a total way that women are spoken about in the media, especially conservative women, that's really negative and nasty, and you're just like caricatures. And I felt much more like understanding of her position and her position now. When I was parodied on SNL the first time, it was really not fun and I really didn't like it. And I remember Ben and I were like on vacation and it like ruined a day of vacation because it was like really unflattering. And I remember being like, the scary part about SNL impersonations is it can turn into truth. Like people won't see the difference between you and the parody. And even in that moment, I was like, I just have so much compassion for her and what she must have dealt with after, because I think so much of the parody of her turned into what people saw of her and not the actual person. And my memories of her are actually really positive. And she was the first, to this day, I still am grateful. She was the first mom I ever saw in politics. And her baby at the time was like 5 months old when my dad picked her. And I have like really clear memories of her bottle feeding him like backstage before like, speeches and events. And I think that's really underappreciated that, to see a mom like that, especially now, like knowing what I know with babies,
Yeah.
like how incredible that is. So that's my answer, which is, I know people always think that's funny.
I love that. And I hope that happens because I think that would be just, again, such a fascinating conversation. Oh, I love
I would love to, but again, I get it, like she's probably like, what's going to happen, but I come with nothing but peace and love.
Well, I also think she has had some interviews and even on, what she probably thought were more friendly, were going to be more friendly interviews where it got to a point where it didn't matter who she was sitting down with. They were coming
Yeah.
at her, so she's probably a little scarred from that. So you just got to keep working it. Got to keep
Yeah.
working
I'll try again, but
it. I love it.
anybody put in a good word, please do.
Yeah. Okay. So, wrapping things up, I always ask and like, listen, you've had, and I could talk to you for hours, but being in the public eye since you were very young, you've had to overcome a lot. You've had to deal with a lot of adversity, a lot of things people are throwing at you. You lose the most, pivotal figure in your life. And so, um, you know, you've had to be resilient. And I talk a lot about what it means to be resilient and what living a resilient life looks like. And I try to live a resilient life. I don't do it every day, but I try. It's my goal. But I always am interested to know from our guests, like what living a resilient life looks like for you.
Well, for me, I always try and keep perspective. And one of the things that has helped is one of the things we have in common is having brothers in the military really has always helped because whatever bad day I'm having, I can remember one time calling my brother and it was like something when I was on some show or something and it went really badly. And I remember calling him and he was like, Megan, I've dug sewers in Iraq. Like I really can't like talk to you about your bad day. He was like, oh, did you get your hair and makeup done and go on TV and it wasn't good? Like I can't. And like having that in my life still to this day is like a good place where you can like see outside yourself and see it's not really that bad. That being said, like pain is for anyone when you go through like grief or pain, it's, you know, it doesn't matter your perspective, it still hurts and it's still hard. And one of the things that is, this is so crazy. This is the thing I say to myself and has like the quote that like gets me through everything. And it's a little cheesy, but it's a Rocky Balboa quote about life. It's not how hard you get hit, it's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And I always am like, life is 9 rounds in the ring. And I've certainly been hit and punched on my ass, metaphorically, not literally. And you just shake it off and keep moving forward. And I feel like I have like literal scars on my body and then like metaphorical scars on my body that I'm really proud of because, I'm not a victim and I'm not sad all the time. And I always think like my dad would always just want me to be happy and keep living. And I just try and really feel literally every night before I go to bed, I write in a journal my gratitude, like what I'm grateful for the day. And it can be as simple as like, whatever, going to Chick-fil-A and having a Sunjoy, or as like big as like, getting something great at work. And that really helps me. And I have a strong faith and like just knowing that God has a plan has really been something I like surrender to God in all ways because there's nothing else you can do. And I think now that I have like a 360 perspective on so many things, I really do see that there's a plan for everything. That sounds very futile and trite when you are going through grief and you've lost someone, and that never helped me. I was like, well, okay, great, but like, I don't understand this plan because it's, obviously so painful. And also not to like bring it back to your brother, but my dad, before he wore this bracelet every day, you may know this, of a soldier who died named Matthew Stanley. It's like one of those that people know what they look like, those silver ones. And my dad wore it his entire life, and he actually gave it to me before he died. And I've only worn it a few times. One of them was when I gave his eulogy, giving birth to both my daughters. Like, and sometimes now like visit his grave, like very important things, I'll wear it. And he wore that to remind himself that like, you know, there's real tragedy in the world, but we have to like live in their memory and their honor, and also understand that like my tragedy is small compared to tragedy like that. And it's literally, if my house were on fire, I would grab my kids and that bracelet. It's like the most important thing I own by far. And it's like in a safe in my jewelry box. And anytime I need like a reflection, I just try and remind myself of that. And I think of Matthew Stanley and his family not infrequently. And and how he got the bracelet was the father of Matthew Stanley stood up in a town hall and asked him to like keep his memory, his son's memory alive. And then he wore it like literally his entire life until the day he died. So that is always helpful to me. And I have a good sense of humor about things. I always try and keep like a dark sense of humor too. That has helped me a lot in different situations. I think humor is very important. And I don't know, but I think we're all trying and doing the best we can, and life is a journey. And you're gonna have bad days, but again, like just got to get up and keep moving forward. And that has really helped me. I don't know if that sounds interesting or not, but that's how I live.
No, I love it. And I think two things. I think the humor part is huge. We as a family, try to embrace the humor and everything. And, sometimes it's the dark humor because we've had a lot of dark moments, but you have to bring that laughter back. And, one of the things that I always say, and I love, this story, and I knew the story about your dad. I didn't know that he had given that bracelet to you, but, through the Travis Manion Foundation and with Emily and the Honor Project, like our whole thing is like, learn the story, right? Learn the story of a fallen soldier, service member, and not just learn it, but pass it on. And you are now the bearer of passing on Matthew Stanley's name. And, I knew your dad wore that bracelet. I didn't know his name. I know his name now. And now you've introduced his name to hopefully thousands of more people who will be listening to this episode. So it just kind of brings it all back to why we as an organization exist. I always say that the Travis Manion Foundation, because we've grown so exponentially in the last several years, the one thing that Travis would hate about the organization is that it's named after him, because he's really humble. Most service members are, and he would hate that there was this, like his name was everywhere. And I always say that like my response to him, and I say would be or is, because I hope he hears it, is like his name represents this generation of men and women who have served and sacrificed. And we as a society need to give a face and a name to this next generation, because we are so largely disconnected from the military as a whole. When I tell people, like when I tell you my daughter's going to the Naval Academy, you clearly understand. Your brother went there, your dad went there, like what that means. I tell other people and they wait, so your daughter's going in the Navy? What does that mean? Like some people don't even realize it's a college, And so there is a big disconnect within our society between those that serve. And we can get in a whole other conversation about retention.
There's like data about it, right? That like it's like only like 10% or something of people have a family member in the military. It's like very low right now. I do know that.
Less than 1%.
Awful. That's what's so wild to me about it? I feel like everybody I know is that my entire family, my family I'm married into, are all in the military too. And I have so many friends who are in the military. And then I don't know if that's just like my bubble, but when I heard that, I was actually quite shocked, because I feel like I just meet people that are serving everywhere I go.
Well, right now, and I think the reason that is because right now, people that are joining the military are coming from homes that have people who were in the military. So it is very cyclical in like that. These families are helping to keep the retention going and the recruitment going, but like recruitment's at an all-time low for every service branch but the Marine Corps. They're the only service branch that hit their recruitment requirements. And so it's a scary place to be in as we look at everything that's going on within the world. We really have to figure out what we're doing here to, I think people get mixed up with this idea, like where patriotism has somehow become like a bad word. And people look at it with this negative connotation. But
Makes
yeah,
I can't talk about it. It makes me insane.
yeah,
It makes me very upset and very uh just angry, and I feel like it's just a deep level of ignorance, and I just can't I can't deal with it. It's really hard for me. I'm so grateful. I travel. I've been so lucky, like you. I've traveled so many places and I've been around the world. And America's, every time I leave, I'm like, God, I just want to go back. Like, even like as silly as like I had to go to London for work, like, I don't know, 2 years ago. And I remember being like, I can't get any fucking ice in this country. Like, I don't
it's
like
just
it here.
water.
Like,
They never give
yes,
you ice.
stuff like, and there were like other things, and I was like, why do people like it here so much? It's so much better in America. Like, and my one of my girlfriends lives in London, and she's an American, but she married a man in the UK. And I picked her up from the airport when she was here, and I drive a Tahoe because I'm a mom and I have two car seats. And she was like, "This is your car? This is your car?" She's like, "Let me drive this car." She's like, "This is the most." She's like, "I love this car, like the biggest car ever." And I was like, "Everything's bigger here, baby. Like,
That's
it's
right. Listen, I drive an F-150, so I get it. The bigger, the better. And people are like, why do you drive this big car? I'm like, because I want to be above everybody. I'm like,
I
I'm 5'3". I'm a tiny girl. I don't want to be low I want to be above all of you on the highway. And I want the
I'll never go back. I will never go back. It's my favorite thing. I love our car. It's my favorite thing. I love driving it. Same like you. I'm 5'2", and I'm like, I love this giant car, whatever. But they like don't exist in the UK. Like they don't have,
yeah.
you know, like that. So I get, and there's so many things to love about this country, but I think like people sacrifice every day and die and, better than anyone. And I'm never leaving here. I don't care if like I'm never moving across. I had a job opportunity in the UK a few years ago, and I was like, "There's no way. Like, there's
Not
just no
happening.
way. I love it here. I'm not going. Like, I just can't." And I don't know. I think I have such a deep love for the country, and it's just given me so much. And people again sacrifice so much that I don't understand it, and I think it's just arrogant and gross. And it's one of the few things I have a hard time personally getting over in my personal life. Like if someone hates America, I don't think we're like going to be a vibe with friendship. It's just, I think it would be just too hard for me.
Yeah. And listen, I have friends on both sides. I had Pete Hegseth on last week and I asked him, I'm like, Pete, do you have any friends that are liberal? And he said no. And no. And I was like, really? And I find that wild. And he said he used to, but he doesn't anymore. And I do. I have friends that are the most conservative of conservative, and I have some of the most liberal friends ever. Now, I don't have liberal friends that don't love this country. I will say that. But I do have liberal friends, and I found it wild. And I said, "You don't have one liberal friend." And then I started naming people that I knew that he knew. I was like, "Well, what about Patrick Murphy? He's liberal. You have him." He goes, "Oh, well, Patrick's a nice guy." And I go, "He's super liberal." Like I'm trying to show him that you do have commonplace with some liberals. But we were talking and he brought up the same thing you did. And when you talk about what living a resilient life is, and he brought up God. And I said, you are the first person that has brought up, and he talked mainly like that was it for him, was religion and God. And I said, you're the first person that leaned into that in a big way when I asked that question. And so, and that's a big thing for me. And I believe that I can't not believe that God doesn't have a plan, because if he
Yeah.
doesn't, like, then God, I have to, and I do. And so I think looking at life from that perspective, and like you say, putting it all in perspective, like I'm never going to say I've been dealt a shitty hand. But I lost my best friend. We were a year apart, and then my mom, who was my best friend, who was my confidant, my everything. And so, but I leave it up to God, because clearly he has a plan set out for all of us. And, I love that my back-to-back guests both lean into that, and what a role that God plays in our world and in our lives. And, yeah.
I don't always talk about it because like, there are other people who can talk about religion in a much better way than I do, but it's very important to me. And I'm always so glad that I married a man that is like, even more religious than I am. And after my dad died, I just really leaned into the church and scripture, and it's really helped me a lot. But it's not easy. And I don't want anyone to feel bad that it doesn't come easy. It's an exercise for me as well. Like I have to use that muscle and like want to have a relationship with God and work on it like any other relationship. But it's really the thing that has saved, like more than anything, it's the thing that has saved me, that and my kids, like after my dad died. And I'm just honestly, I don't know if you feel this way. I'm just like so grateful to be here. Like I really feel that way. I'm so grateful I'm like here and healthy and happy and like I don't know. I'm at such a, maybe it's like because I'm turning 40 soon. I'm at such a place of peace and contentment that it's the greatest joy. So,
Well,
you know,
I'll tell you, I turned 40 a few years ago. It's not that scary. I actually kind of love my 40s. So, I feel like it's where you start to like really come into your own. So get excited about your 40s.
it's weird being the older lady in so many groups I have because I work with a lot of Zers that are on my team. And there's some things that I reference, like one didn't know who Charles Barkley was. And I was like, I swear to God, like I can't, you don't know who Charles Barkley is? Like what? So it's stuff like that where I'm like, I'm not that old, but I guess I am. I don't know. Anyway.
Meghan, thank you so much. This was awesome. I really appreciate you coming on. And yeah, I again hope to have you back because I feel like we could keep talking about a lot of things.
Sure. And I hope you can come on mine anytime, taking a little break for the 4th of July, which is my favorite holiday.
As you must. Yes.
Yeah, I love the 4th of July. I'm going home to Arizona. I'm so excited. I'm gonna do all the things. So speaking of patriotic, it's like go crazy on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
But thank you for having me on. And like I said, please come on my podcast. And I'm so grateful for all that you do. And it's just really amazing work and so important to so many people.
Thanks, Meghan.